All right, hello and welcome back to One Man Battery, a channel dedicated to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Again, my name is Ben, and welcome. We're back with another video. Last video I did a recap of the 2022-23 season, the good, the bad, the ugly, and all that was the 2022-23 season for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Whoo! Today I want to get into really the first in an off-season series of things I want to cover from the off-season. It's been kind of an eventful off-season for the Blue Jackets. We've replaced a couple of coaches, including our head coach. We've made a couple of big trades. Will we be done with that? Who knows? We'll see. And by all accounts, we had a good draft earlier this month. At some point in the series, I am going to be covering all of those things. But first, I thought I would start with really the thing that kicked off the Blue Jackets offseason, and that was the coaching changes. Now, before I get into that, I would like to give a quick shout-out to the hockey guy. Love his content. Watch it pretty consistently. I stumbled onto one of his videos from a month ago talking about the new versus old economics of expansion and how expansion really has changed over the years. And I thought that was interesting. In that video, he pointed out something I pointed out in my season recap video, and that was the Seattle Kraken picking up Oliver Bjorkstrand. I felt like that was a great move for the Kraken. Didn't work out so well for the Blue Jackets. And not that he's agreeing with me on that. Probably hasn't even seen my video, and that's fine, understandable, given that it was my first video. But it was nice to see that on someone else's radar, so quick shout out to him. Anyway, let's dive into the coaching changes. So, kind of expected, let's be honest. Season ended April 14th. April 15th, the Jackets announced they were firing head coach Brad Larson and would not be retaining goalie coach Manny Legacy. Again, not a surprise if you'd watched the team at all. Did not blow anybody's minds that those two were going to be let go, let's be honest. And I'm going to get into Brad Larson's tenure in a bit, but I actually want to start with Manny Legacy, so that's where we're going to kick things off. So let's talk Manny Legacy. Guy that came in with a solid career as an NHL goaltender and a really solid position coach. He'd been the goaltending coach in a couple of different places, including with Cleveland, the Blue Jackets minor league affiliate, before being hired as the goalie coach in 2018. His first season went pretty well. The Jackets were 11th in goals against. Sergei Bobrovsky, again, a name that Columbus Blue Jackets fans might not want to talk about, but Sergei Bobrovsky finished 9th in Vezina voting. I will point out that the previous season, his numbers had dropped from the previous season. Save percentage, goals against average, both dropped. Both took a dip from the previous season, even though he faced 237 less shots. So goaltending solid, but a little bit of a regression in areas. Of course, then Bobrovsky bolts for Florida, signing that big contract in free agency. And, of course, he just took the Florida Panthers to the Stanley Cup Finals. So there it is, again, sore subject. Coincidentally, his backup, Jonas Korpisalo, seemed to improve under Manny Legacy. But I'm not going to get much into that. Not until later, anyway. That's also the season that, oh, by the way, we pulled off that huge upset against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Maybe the biggest upset in NHL history. So, Legacy, things are, at least in that first season, on an upward trend. But what happens after that? Well, largely regression, okay? We did actually improve the next season to third in goals against average, or goals against. In 2019-2020, we made the playoffs, beat Toronto in the qualifying round, and then we got beat by Tampa in 5. Close games, but we got beat by Tampa in 5. I think they were out for a little bit of revenge. That was the COVID season. Things are strange, man. What can I say? That's just is what it is. Despite that little blip where we finished third in goals against in the league, Since then, we finished 25th, 28th, 31st in the subsequent season. And as I pointed out in the last video, last season we trotted out 6 goalies throughout the course of the season. 6 goalies. Oh, and I forgot to point this out in my season review. We could have very well trotted out a 7th because we did acquire Jonathan Quick in that trade with the Kings for Korpisalo, Gavrikov, those things. I don't think there was any plan to play him. But, again, we could have tried it out a 7th had Quick actually played for us. 2 things I see in that, and I think this is why Manny Legace was let go. There's really not much stability at goalie. You thought there was going to be with Merzlikins and Korpisalo as the backup. We thought we had a solid tandem there. Ends up not being what we thought it was. So that stability is not being established. Goalies aren't being developed to create that stability. If you look at Elvis Merzlikins, 2019-2020, we thought, here's the guy, 13-9-8 with a .923 save percentage, 2.35 goals against. He makes the all-rookie team. He's 5th in the Calder voting, 5th in the Vezina. So Elvis has this tremendous upside, right? But since then, regression, okay, if you look at it, okay? I know the 21-22 season, he has a 27-23-7 record, but he also dropped statistically in save percentage and goals against average. The year after he signed that big 5-year, $27 million contract extension. But since then he's regressed in those statistical categories, and that culminated in last season's 7-18-2 record, an .876 save percentage, 4.23 goals against average. Not exactly stellar, especially for a guy making close to $6 million a year. Then his backup, Jonas Korpisalo, again, last season significantly better, but again, not the one who's making $6 million a year. Again, he's the backup. However, and I said it in my season review video, if you'd have asked me after the 21-22 season who our most consistent goaltender would have been, I would not have said Jonas Korpisalo. But he turns in a more solid season than Elvis Merzlikins. Then they ship him off to L.A. In the trade with Gavrikov as well. And he is markedly better in L.A. The Kings make the playoffs. You can attribute that to his play in L.A. You can attribute that to a better defense in front of him. Absolutely. I think a change in scenery is good as well. Not that I don't like Columbus. Obviously love Columbus. The regression, again, you can attribute that to the defensive play in front of him. Obviously, we dealt with a lot of injuries last season. At the end of the day, though, it's the goalie who stops the puck. And this is a guy who grew up watching Dominik Hasek. Okay? The defense never seemed to play well in front of Dominik Hasek, yet he got it done. Now, having said that, our goalies are not Dominik Hasek. There is only one Dominik Hasek. But point is, the goalie still has to stop the puck. Coaching is a part of that. I see a pattern of regression here, and I think that's, at the end of the day, why Manny Legace was let go. Because, especially when you're paying a guy $6 million, if it comes down to the coach or the player making $6 million, the coach is going to be gone. So we're out with Manny Legace, in with Nicklas Backstrom. We don't know exactly what we're getting out of Nicklas Backstrom yet. We know solid NHL goaltending career, 10 seasons with the Minnesota Wild, the Calgary Flames, led the Wild to the playoffs in 07, 08, and 2013, 14, and 15. Finished third in the Vezina in 2009. So really solid playing career. He has been with the Blue Jackets since 2019 as their European goaltending development coach. Doesn't have any position coach experience, so we'll see how that goes. But a little bit less experience than Manny Legace, but we'll see how it goes. Regardless, I think Backstrom does face a bit of an uphill battle trying to help Elvis bounce back, get back to form, developing those younger goalies under him. Right now, it looks like Daniil Tarasov is going to be that guy. Like I said, I'm a guy who's kind of high on Tarasov. 24 years old, 6'5". I think last season, the season before especially, there were flashes of something really special there. Again, we'll see how that goes. But again, he's trying to bring stability to that position. So it's all about helping Elvis develop and bounce back to what he had been, and then developing Tarasov. So we'll see how that goes. But let's get into Brad Larson. Obviously, the bigger coaching change, head coach is out, new coach is in. We'll get to Mike Babcock here in a second. Bit of a disclaimer first. Again, I said it in my season review. I like Brad Larson. I think that he's a good coach. Just not a head coach. I'm not a big fan of him as a head coach, at least at this stage in his career, which it kind of feels weird to say because he's still fairly young. He's still only 45. And I think it's possible that he turns into a good and solid NHL head coach. And I honestly expected him to get a pass for this season with the injuries and the youth and everything. But again, and I'll get into this, watching the team, was he the answer at head coach? I don't think he was. Larson had been with the organization since 2010, been a Blue Jackets assistant since 2014, and then was obviously hired to replace John Tortorella. At the time, Jarmo Kekalainen said hiring him, that nobody seemed to get over the Lars bar, right? The Lars bar was the whole thing. So apparently to our GM, this was a home run hire. Okay, nobody could get over the Lars bar. In hindsight, you telling me Gerard Gallant couldn't get over the Lars bar? Neither could Todd Richards or David Quinn. Obviously, Gerard Gallant, Todd Richards, they'd been with the organization before. David Quinn, I believe, with the New York Rangers. They were the other candidates at the time. Hindsight's obviously always 20/20. It's easy to look back at it through that lens, and would things have been different? Maybe, but we did what we did at the time. And to be fair, at the time, you could make an argument that this hiring made a lot of sense. Jarmo Kekalainen saw it that way. Anyway, he talked about how well they knew Brad Larson. They knew exactly what they were getting out of Brad Larson and felt that what he brought to the table trumped everything else. The Lars bar, they felt like he set the bar for everything else. And here's the thing, in my estimation. He was young. He was only 43 when he was hired, and had been in the organization, which, if your organization can find a good young assistant to promote and it works out, you've set yourself up nicely for years to come, hopefully, right? Here's the thing, though. You could make the argument the other way. You could make an equally compelling argument that his hiring made no sense at all. The organization had just mutually parted ways with John Tortorella. They felt that a different voice was needed in the locker room, that was necessary. So what do? They go out and hire a Tortorella assistant. At the time, Larson said he had learned a lot of things from Tortorella, but vowed to be his own guy. And that never really happened. I'll reference Dan Ducart over at First Ohio Battery. He wrote a really good piece for First Ohio Battery back in April, talking about how a lack of a seasoned assistant was an issue, as well as a lack of identity and culture. All those things I totally agree with. I think those were part of why Brad Larson never succeeded in Columbus. Do I think those things are contributing factors? Yep. And I think if you watch the Blue Jackets over the past couple of seasons, you'd agree with that as well. I go back to, I think that despite the fact that maybe the deck was stacked against Brad Larson, the guy was just in over his head. He just felt that way throughout his tenure. And I talked about the way he managed the lineup. Just our lack of consistency. Now, I will concede all day long that injuries, youth, they totally played a part in that. It makes it hard to put a lineup together when you're facing those kind of things. Still, the Jackets seem to be very inconsistent, either hot or cold. Very streaky team, always inconsistent. And if you watch the Jackets, it always felt like there were mental lapses in the game. There were times, especially in the 2021-22 season, I felt like we could be up 2 goals, and then we give up 2 or 3 goals in a matter of a minute and 3 seconds. I believe we did that against the Rangers one time. So you can look that up. Just mental lapses, okay? An example of that, my family and I went to a game in Nationwide this past season in November against the Islanders. Islanders, a solid team. We knew that with Ilya Sorokin in net, the Islanders were going to be tough. And, going into the third period, we were down 2-0. Or in the second period, we were down 2-0. We came back, fought back, tied it up 2-2 going into the third. And then 6 minutes into the third, what typifies the Blue Jackets season? The Islanders push the puck into their offensive zone. Jackets can't clear it. Jake Christensen turns it over, and he and Eric Goodbranson just kind of leave Jonas Korpisalo out to dry while Brock Nelson walks in. I mean, watch the replay. Basically just walks in and scores what turns out to be the game-winning goal. And look, like I said, I know every team has those moments. I know we're a young team, and you're going to have those kind of mistakes. But they seem to be a regular occurrence under Brad Larson. There's no other way to put it. And, I will say this, though. I will say this to Brad Larson's credit. Very rarely did I feel like the team just gave up in a game. And maybe you feel differently. That's fine. So I think he did get the team to play hard. I don't feel like they ever gave up on Brad Larson, but I do think the team just had a lack of focus, and Larson's decision making left a lot to be desired. I think you can look to the handling of Cole Sillinger for that. And another disclaimer here: I understand that with a guy like Cole Sillinger, who just turned 20, sending him down to the minors could absolutely wreck his confidence, and that's the last thing you want to do with a young guy like that. But he was struggling. I covered that in my season review video. Cole Sillinger was struggling 64 games, only 11 points. Okay? Would sending him down have helped? We'll see. They didn't make that decision till March, though. The season was almost over. They could have given Sillinger a boost long before that. And, do you send him down? Do you leave him where he's at? A decision needed to be made. Brad Larson's lack of decision-making, definitely a factor. I think he would have gotten a pass because of the injuries and the youth. But again, you can point to other things beyond that said Brad Larson was not the right guy moving forward. Is it true, as Ducart points out, that this deck was stacked against Brad Larson? Sure, yeah. But I think a good coach finds a way through that, and Brad Larson never seemed to do that. At the end of the day, we were a streaky team, inconsistent, lack of focus at times, and, that ultimately cost Brad Larson, I think. Brad Larson is out. Enter Mike Babcock. Okay. This really was the worst kept secret of the offseason. It became apparent pretty quickly that Babcock was the guy. Okay. There were a ton of names connected to the Jackets coaching vacancy. Obviously Babcock, Peter Laviolette, who had been with the Capitals. He ends up in New York. Andrew Burnett. He was the top Devils assistant before he ended up as the head coach in Nashville. Pascal Vincent, who was our top assistant, and it looks like he's staying on staff in Columbus. Do you hire an assistant to hire within, whatever? Even Sergei Fedorov and Patrick Waugh, they were thrown out there. But as the months went by, you started to hear less and less about other guys. Or in general, there was like nothing out there, like no coaching rumors, no nothing. It seemed to be shut down, and you figured out pretty quickly that Mike Babcock was going to be the hire there. Then the report obviously comes in late June that the Jackets, all they were doing was waiting for Babcock's contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs to expire, which was June 30th. So then the next day, sure enough, July 1st, they hire Mike Babcock and introduce him as the team's next head coach. So we know who we're getting. Look though, with Mike Babcock, I'm taking a wait and see approach. Honestly, from a coaching standpoint, you know what you're getting with Mike Babcock. Word is that there is no better X's and O's coach in the league than Mike Babcock. You know what you're getting. 700 career wins, taking 2 teams to 3 Stanley Cup finals. Won a Stanley Cup with Detroit in 2008. He's got an Olympic gold medal with Team Canada in Sochi in 2014. So we know the resume is there. The resume is there. But we also know what else is out there, and that's the criticism. We've heard a lot from Mike Commodore and his run-ins with Mike Babcock in Cincinnati early in his career in Anaheim with their farm system, then later on in Detroit. Johan Franzen praised Babcock for his preparation and his coaching acumen, but also called him, quote, a terrible man, the worst person I've ever met. And that was corroborated by Chris Chelios. So ringing endorsement from a Hall of Famer there. You also have other incidents with Mike Modano in Detroit being scratched before his 1,500th career game. So he's stuck on 1,499 for his career. Stuff with Mitch Marner and Jason Spezza in Toronto, which is why we had to wait on the Toronto contract. He was fired, and we had to wait for that contract to expire. So we all know what's out there, again, the good, the bad, and the ugly of Mike Babcock. In his introductory press conference, let's be honest, he didn't do much to address that criticism, dispel that criticism. But I have heard him talk in subsequent interviews about that, address it a little bit more. And he says he's learned a lot in his 3 years out of the league, particularly coaching college kids at the University of Saskatchewan. So we'll see. We'll see again. Wait and see approach there. Here's the deal for me. He is on a 2-year, $8 million contract. That's his prove-it deal to me. Now, you can look at the fact that he's 60 years old. Age might be a factor in that 2-year contract. But again, it strikes me as a prove-it deal. It says to me that the front office knows what they're looking for, but they also know the criticisms that are out there and doesn't necessarily want to pull the trigger on a long-term deal. Again, age may be a factor, but that's kind of what it says to me. Outside of the age, with Babcock's resume, why wouldn't you figure out a long-term deal with a coach of his caliber? And long-term, maybe 5 years, maybe he coaches to 65. Who knows? I don't know what that's going to look like. But again, we'll see. I am taking a wait-and-see approach with Mike Babcock. But that covers the coaching changes for this offseason. Let me know your opinions down in the comment section. If you could do me a favor, offer up a like and a subscribe on this video. I appreciate anything you can throw this channel right now. Again, thank you for watching. Thanks for sticking with me to the end. Hopefully I've given you some things to think about. Again, throw something down there in the comment section. Let me know your opinions, but I appreciate you sticking with me to the end. Next video, we will be covering some of those big offseason trades, and we'll go from there. But in the meantime, we will see you next time.